In a historic decision, the Supreme Court has struck down the Trump-era tariffs, fundamentally altering U.S. trade policy. The court ruled these tariffs, affecting a wide range of imports, were imposed without proper congressional authority. This dismantles a key policy of the previous administration and sets a new legal precedent for future trade actions. The decision follows years of legal battles led by American businesses and trade groups, who argued the tariffs raised costs for producers and consumers alike. The court found the executive branch had overstepped its constitutional powers, reshaping the separation of powers in international commerce. As a result, the tariffs will be lifted, offering immediate relief to companies burdened by high import costs. The ruling clarifies that only Congress can authorize such sweeping economic measures. This forces the current and future administrations to rethink their approach to global trade and supply chains. The decision shifts trade policy from unilateral executive action to a more collaborative, legislative process. It reasserts the checks and balances at the heart of American governance. The full impact will unfold as businesses and global partners adapt to this new reality. The Trump-era tariffs were central to the administration's America First agenda, targeting imports from China and key allies. Introduced in 2018, the tariffs aim to protect U.S. industries, reduce the trade deficit, and pressure foreign governments to change trade practices. They covered everything from steel and aluminum to consumer goods. The administration relied on Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, citing national security, and Section 301 of the Trade Act to target China for intellectual property concerns. These justifications were controversial and quickly challenged in court. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries sparked a global trade war, hurting U.S. farmers and manufacturers. Supporters claimed the tariffs protected American jobs and industries hollowed out by unfair foreign practices. Critics argued they acted as a tax on U.S. businesses and consumers, stifling growth. The resulting economic uncertainty fueled national debate. The fundamental disagreement over the tariffs' purpose and impact set the stage for the Supreme Court showdown. The court's ruling now forces a new approach to trade policy. The era of sweeping, unilateral tariffs has ended. The Trump-era tariffs sparked fierce debate and had wide-ranging effects on American industries. Many businesses, especially those relying on global supply chains, faced soaring costs, over $50 billion annually in import taxes. Retailers, automakers, and tech firms welcomed the Supreme Court's decision, anticipating lower prices and greater stability. However, domestic steel and aluminum producers, who benefited from the tariffs, now face renewed foreign competition and uncertainty. The tariffs created clear winners and losers, and the court's decision reverses that dynamic. The challenge now is crafting trade policy that balances the needs of all sectors. The debate over how best to support American industry in a globalized world is far from over. The new legal landscape demands adaptation from every corner of the economy. The legal battle over the tariffs centered on the separation of powers. Plaintiffs argued the executive branch usurped Congress's constitutional authority to regulate trade and impose tariffs. The administration claimed national security justified broad executive action under Section 232. Opponents countered this was an overreach, using national security as a pretext for economic policy. The Supreme Court sided with a stricter interpretation, clarifying limits on presidential power and reaffirming Congress's central role. The ruling restores checks and balances in trade policy. The Supreme Court's majority opinion focused on statutory intent and constitutional principles. The justices ruled that Section 232 was never meant to give the president sweeping power to reshape the economy. Allowing such authority would undermine Congress's core legislative role in regulating foreign commerce. The court found the administration's use of national security as justification was overly broad and lacked clear limits. The decision signals that future tariff authority must be explicitly defined by Congress. The ruling reinforces the rule of law, even in matters of trade and national security. Tariffs remain a policy tool, but only through proper constitutional process. The decision ensures major economic actions require legislative debate and approval. The Supreme Court's decision reshapes the future of U.S. trade policy. Presidents can no longer unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs by citing national security. Future trade measures will require closer collaboration with Congress, leading to more stable and predictable policies. The executive branch must now rely on diplomacy, trade agreements, and international dispute resolution instead of tariffs as a primary tool. Congress regains its central role, facing pressure to modernize trade laws for today's global economy. The ruling shifts power from the White House to Capitol Hill, demanding bipartisan cooperation. While rapid policy shifts may be harder, businesses and partners gain greater certainty. The new framework embeds trade policy more deeply in the democratic process. This reset promises a more balanced, accountable approach to global commerce. The long-term effect, a trade policy shaped by consensus, not executive decree. The Supreme Court's decision has been welcomed by U.S. trading partners worldwide. Allies like the EU, Canada, and Japan see it as a return to predictable, rules-based trade. The removal of U.S. tariffs is expected to prompt other countries to lift their retaliatory measures, easing pressure on American exporters. This de-escalation could restore billions in lost revenue for U.S. agriculture and manufacturing. The ruling opens the door to mending strained diplomatic ties and fostering global cooperation. With China, the implications are more complex. Structural tensions remain, but the U.S. must now address them through negotiation and alliances, not unilateral tariffs. The focus shifts to enforcing trade rules and building coalitions to address ongoing disputes. The era of trade wars gives way to strategic diplomacy and multilateral engagement. The U.S. is now positioned to lead by example in upholding global trade norms. The ruling forces a more thoughtful, long-term approach to managing economic competition with China. Internationally, the decision is seen as a step towards stability and renewed partnership. The world is watching how America will use this opportunity to redefine its global economic role. U.S. businesses now face a transformed trade landscape. For import-dependent companies, the end of tariffs means lower costs, more stable supply chains, and new opportunities for growth. Many expect to pass savings to consumers and invest in innovation. Domestic industries once shielded by tariffs, like steel and aluminum, must adapt to tougher competition. These sectors may seek new forms of support or pivot to higher value markets. The new trade framework encourages businesses to engage in the legislative process and build resilient, diversified supply chains. The shift to a rules-based system benefits the broader economy, fostering competition and global partnerships. Some industries will face challenges, but the overall outlook is one of greater predictability and opportunity. Adaptation and strategic engagement are now essential for success. American businesses that embrace this new normal will be best positioned for sustainable growth. The Supreme Court's decision marks a turning point in U.S. trade policy. By curbing executive overreach, the court restores Congress's primary role in shaping trade law. The ruling ends an era of unilateral tariffs and signals a return to deliberative, democratic policymaking. Industries burdened by tariffs anticipate relief, while those once protected must adapt to new realities. Internationally, the decision paves the way for renewed cooperation and less confrontational trade relations. The legal rationale sets clear limits on presidential power, demanding explicit congressional approval for major tariff actions. Trade policy is now more stable, accountable, and predictable. The ruling closes a chapter of trade wars and opens one of opportunity and collaboration. The future of American commerce will be defined by adaptation, resilience, and engagement with both lawmakers and global partners. As the world adjusts, the U.S. faces a pivotal question: how will it lead in the evolving global economy?